everybody. Welcome in once again to the Casual Sports Podcast. Happy Thursday, everybody. Closing down on the week. Thursday's college football day for us, and we got a whole bunch of college football games to go into. A few change-ups here from the original college football schedule, but we still got a full slate. We're talking everything from Duke's Mayo Bowl to the Peach Bowl to the Gator Bowl, all the way down through the Sugar Bowl. So the only games we're not touching are our college football playoff games that we're going into on New Year's Eve on tomorrow's show. So if you want to hear about those, come on back tomorrow. And we got a bunch of games here, Matt. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
Couldn't ask for anything better than some college football every day of the week. So I'm feeling pretty good myself. Yesterday, Maryland, Matt, they went off in that game against Virginia Tech. 52 points. They were incredible. Clemson picked up the victory. They kind of did everything we thought they were going to against Iowa State. Iowa State felt depleted, and they really were. It was more in the fair until Clemson kind of got things going a little bit. They didn't really ever heat up, but both squads kind of went back and forth. Clemson came out on top. And then Oklahoma really shocked everybody there with the way they dismantled Oregon. It became a closer game in that second quarter. They're bringing that second half, but still, the Sooners football team, they clearly have enough talent on this roster to win football games. I mean, Kennedy Brooks, 142 yards. Caleb Williams had 242 yards and 3 touchdowns on nearly perfect completions. So 21 of 27 for him. And the other side of this ball, it just felt like Oregon was still stuck in the mud, just like they were in those Utah games. There was just no doing what they wanted to do in order to win football games. And now today, I guess we're going to find out if we have more surprises in store for us here with some college football. So with that being said, Matt, let's talk about the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Love the name of this one, although I don't think I can be so much of a favorite of getting mayonnaise dumped on the head coach who wins the game. I feel like that almost should be losing coach should get mayonnaise dumped on him, if I'm being honest here.
That wouldn't be, I don't know. It'd take a lot for it to come out. I don't know. Yeah, that probably wouldn't be a good idea. I like what they did with the Cheez-It Bowl where they dumped Cheez-Its on Dabo Sweeney. That was cool.
Even like the Idaho Potato Bowl, they dump the French fries on the winning coach.
That'd be cool.
But that would just be a greasy mess, especially if you get like those Five Guys French fries that are just drenched in grease. Those things ain't never coming out. You ain't never gonna wear that shirt to coach again. So you better if you're going to one of those games, you better pick a shirt that you don't care anything about because you're not gonna get another chance to wear it.
No.
But this Duke's Mayo Bowl, 6-6 UNC versus the 6-6 South Carolina Gamecocks. You love it. North Carolina versus South Carolina, battling over some mayonnaise. I mean, what more can you ask for? This one, actually, before this show is coming out, it's at 11:30 a.m. So, this I don't really feel like is going to be much of a game. But we have seen UNC play some really good football down the stretch. I mean, they still have a Heisman caliber quarterback in Sam Howell, who is definitely more up and down than ever up. He's such a roller coaster ride throughout this season. But you saw this team play everybody close. They didn't really get blown out more than once this season, and that came all the way back against Georgia Tech when Georgia Tech won 45-22. Every game since then has pretty much been within one possession or 10 points, even against their top 25 opponents, in which they upset one of them on November 6th in Wake Forest. They nearly upset NC State to finish the season. They nearly upset Pitt. They nearly upset Notre Dame. This team has had a difficult schedule, and they are a very talented roster. And I think they're probably going to put it together again because South Carolina, in all honesty, is not a very good football team.
No, not really.
These two teams have the same record, but they are nowhere similar on paper.
No. And, I mean, they should be a little bit excited. I mean, Spencer Rattler transferring in, but even then, I don't know.
Right, he's not going to be starting.
Yeah, he's not going to be starting. But, this team hasn't been good for years either. Like, they're always at the 6-6 level, just barely getting into a bowl game. And I just, North Carolina, like you said, Sam Howell, yes, he's a little bit inconsistent. I think I've talked about before the hype got to his head. Oh, the Heisman especially out of North Carolina. Who would ever thought North Carolina, really? I don't think there was ever a Heisman from North Carolina. It got to his head. And I don't think so. I don't think there was a Heisman. Maybe no.
Yeah,
maybe.
No, they don't.
They don't. But Sam Howell, and the coaching here is good too. The former Texas coach, is doing fairly well here. He's bringing up everything. What is his name? Mac Brown. Yeah, Mac Brown. I like what Mac Brown's doing to this program, and this should be successful here. Maybe next year, maybe the year after that. They're building. It just takes time. That's all. But South Carolina, they don't really have anything to show, really. Yes, they're both 6-6, but North Carolina has a better 6-6 resume than South Carolina does. You talked about, they beat Wake Forest, a top team. They haven't really been blown out. Look at South Carolina. They got blown out by Georgia. Okay, they got blown out by first game of the year, they get blown out by the East Illinois Panthers. They blow them out 46-0. That's who they beat. That's one of the games they beat. The East Illinois Panthers. Okay, these are the teams they play.
Matt, there's one thing you can say about this game. Sam Howell's career is now coming full circle. I mean, he checked his first box as a game as a Tar Heel, rallying this North Carolina team from a double-digit deficit in the fourth quarter to defeat South Carolina at Bank of America Stadium on August 31st of 2019. And ever since then, Sam Howell has been the guy at UNC. He owns 21 school records. I mean, this is Sam Howell University at the moment. And unfortunately, they've never been able to really get past, Sam Howell's really good at quarterback. They haven't ever taken that next step and said, hey, we're all really good at football here. It just seems to be individual showings, and you can't win games like that. So I'm concerned how they come out to play if, everybody is ready to go for this game, because I think UNC is going to overlook South Carolina, and the Gamecocks are always dangerous to go up against. It's always a team that, even though they're 6-6, you can't necessarily always overlook them, because they beat Florida 40-7.
They did beat Florida, and they did beat Auburn.
Right, and they beat Auburn, but then they're in a 1-point game against Vanderbilt, and you're like, what? How? And so, I think we go into this game, Matt, you and I are both taking the same sides in this one. I'm taking the Tar Heels, but I don't have a ton of confidence in it.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there. I gotta go with the Tar Heels based on the fact that I think they had a better 6-6 record than their 6-6 record, if that makes any sense. But really, they beat Florida and they beat Auburn. But you talked about the Vanderbilt game, and they lose to Missouri. You lose to Missouri, Clemson blows you out, Texas A&M blows you out. So
yeah, it's hard to get blanked in that final week and then come out swinging for the for postseason stuff. So well, next game up on our list, the Tennessee Volunteers taking on our Boilermakers of Purdue in the Music City Bowl. I really like this matchup. I got good feelings about Purdue coming out. It's really, in my opinion, going to be a matter of who's opting out of this game for Purdue. And, you don't obviously always know the full roster of who's going to be in, who's not going to be in for these games. And you've seen the SEC so far start 0-4 in the college football bowl season. I think they start 0-5 here. I don't have a lot of faith in the Volunteers to win a football game. And, their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, really is – he's okay. They rely more on the ground. And I just think Purdue is a pretty good football team on the ground, and it's going to be a hard team to run against. I really don't think this Tennessee squad showed up in a lot of the games they should have. 3 of their wins are pretty much against pretty crappy opponents in Bowling Green, Tennessee Tech, and South Alabama. You want to talk about cupcake schedules? There you go. That's prime example. They had, some difficult games mixed in there. The 7-point loss to Pitt on September 11th was obviously a crusher to the early part of the season, but then they lose to Florida. And, they lose to Ole Miss. Every big game this team seemed to have, they just couldn't finish. They did pull the upset over Kentucky, but that Kentucky team really doesn't feel like it's that great of a team, despite the fact that they were ranked during the season. I don't see this team actually able to win big games. And you saw the spoiler makers all season long cause chaos within the Big Ten. I mean, there wasn't a week that this team wasn't giving somebody a run for their money. And I think we're going to see that again. And I mean, Purdue is an 8-4 football team. They are good. Their only losses, number 5 Notre Dame, Minnesota, who obviously was very close to a Big Ten championship, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. That's a pretty good freaking resume along the season, if you're asking me, considering they mixed in some wins against Michigan State and Iowa along the way. So, to me, this Purdue team has done so many more things right than Tennessee throughout the season. I've got the spoiler makers doing it again here in the postseason in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with you for all the reasons you just said there. The Purdue Boilermakers have upset teams. I know they didn't upset Ohio State, but they've upset big teams, okay? I mean, they're 8-4, yet Tennessee, they don't really ever excite anybody, probably because they're in the same division as Alabama, probably. But you look at Purdue, I mean, you look at their wins. They beat Iowa. They beat Michigan State. Yeah, but, they've had some losses too, but, I mean, that comes along. I mean, it's Big Ten territory. You can lose any game. Any game is up for grabs when you're playing Big Ten opponents because they play you tough. It's in your division, and they're going to play you hard. But Purdue, and that's what I think makes Purdue a stronger team than Tennessee. Tennessee's just coming out here year round, getting the crap kicked out of them by Alabama and other teams, where Purdue actually fights against these Big Ten teams, okay, and actually makes it a game. Besides Ohio State, but
this season,
but they still put up 31 points against them. They still made it a decent game. There's some things that didn't go their way. Like
their quarterback was 40 of 52 for 390 yards and 4 touchdowns on no interceptions. I mean, they definitely had a pretty good day offensively. They just couldn't keep up at the end of it with what was the most lethal offense in the country at the time. So, I mean, this Purdue team, I got the Boilermakers here, Matt. What about you?
Oh, me too. Oh, I'm going the Boilermakers.
All right. Well, that settles that right there. Had a feeling you were going that way. Now we move on to the Peach Bowl, Matt. We've all been very excited for this matchup. The Pitt Panthers and the Michigan State Spartans of the Big Ten. This is the collision course we've been waiting for, Matt.
Yep.
2 Heisman Trophy candidates, obviously not going to New York, but you just got these two teams. Even if they are opted out, Matt, you still got these 2 squads that can really put on a show outside of those guys. And I mean, I know this Michigan State squad without Kenneth Walker is going to struggle, and they're going to really look probably pretty bad because they don't really have a secondary running back to go to. And you're going to put this game in the hand of Peyton Thorne against Kenny Pickett and a pretty good Pitt defense. I mean, every time Pitt is good, it is led by their defense. And now they have an offense that complements as well.
Yes, absolutely. And even though Pitt does not have Kenny Pickett, Nick Patty, he's been pretty much a career backup. Yes, he has came in sparingly for Pitt, but here's the good news, okay? He's still got that strong offensive line. The offensive line has been strong all year long. And, good thing is for Pitt, they're all returning next year as well. And look at his targets. Look at Jordan Addison. Addison's got the speed. You got Lucas Krull, one of the big tight ends, and you got true freshman Gavin Bartholomew, who has been insane. Add on a couple other guys, too. I like Jared Wayne and Melquise Staval. I like those guys, too. You still got the weapons, okay? Nick Patty, he can throw the ball. He can still run this offense, okay? So it'll be okay. And plus, Pitt should be excited because they get the USC transfer coming in. Slavis, I think his last name.
Yeah,
so that'll be
Slovis.
Cool. Yeah, Slovis. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I mean that'll be a great pickup, and we'll get more into that into the offseason, talking about these football teams we get ready for next year. But Michigan State without their Heisman guy, Pitt without their Heisman guy. To me, the biggest separation when you talk about those Heisman candidates sitting out of this game and getting ready for the NFL draft It's just that one's the quarterback. One is leading this offense, and everything seemingly revolves around him. And now you have to bring in a backup quarterback to play the role of your Heisman caliber quarterback. I don't think there's a team that has that level of performer to just step in right behind and play quarterback even close to that level that's going to keep you in a game like this. Pickett we said this all season. If Pickett was not there, this team would not be an 11-win team. And instead, we see this team at 11-2, and we've said all season that was because of Kenny Pickett. If Kenny Pickett wasn't there, they wouldn't be here. It's that exact scenario playing out right now. Pitt shouldn't be here anymore because Pickett isn't there. So now they're either going to play with a chip on their shoulder and try and prove everybody wrong, or everybody is going to be proven right, and Michigan State is going to run out of here with a victory. Because even without Kenneth Walker, they still have an experienced field commander at the helm. And while he hasn't always been great, Peyton Thorne is still a guy that, at the end of the day, can find ways to win football games. And to me, they have enough behind Kenneth Walker that they can have guys step up, and hopefully, cumulatively, they can match what Kenneth Walker did this season. But even without him, you saw the run game kind of take a back seat in their last few games. They couldn't get it going, and their best players were guys like Peyton Thorne, and you saw it even in the Ohio State game when Kenneth Walker couldn't run the football. Elijah Collins could a little bit against the Buckeyes. So it's about finding your personnel in this game, and Peyton Thorne can win games. When you go back to the Maryland football game, 22 of 30, 287 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception, while Kenneth Walker was putting up 140 on the ground. If this team can maintain balance in this football game, I have no problem seeing Michigan State running away with this one, because Pitt right now is solely relying on their defense. I think they're probably going to get 2 interceptions. I just don't think they have the offense to then march down the field and take this one away from the Spartans. Give me Michigan State to win this football game. I just have more confidence in their total 22 than I do in Pitt.
Yeah, I totally agree with her. But you know who I've been going with all year? I've been hyped up on the Pitt train. Give me Pitt. I'm going with Pitt. I'm so rolling with them. I'm rolling with the Patty train. The players have great trust in him. He's a worker. He understands the offense. The only thing he hasn't had is playing time. So that, I mean, they're learning what life is going to be like without Kenny Pickett. He had a phenomenal football season, but just because he had a phenomenal football season, yes, we said, the things that we said, this Pitt team wouldn't be here without Kenny Pickett and stuff like that. But just because he had a phenomenal football season doesn't mean that Nick Patty can come in and mirror the same thing that Pickett has done. He's going to have all the same things, all the same tools Pickett has. He's been with Pickett. He's sat behind Pickett. He's came in for Pickett. So they've been there forever. Patty and Pickett Patty's been the backup as long as Pickett's been the starter. That's pretty much the thing right there. They've been there a long time. So everybody's comfortable with them, and that's why I'm going to stick here with Pitt. I say Pitt pulls it off here, but it's going to be tough.
Going against the Big Ten, man, that's an odd decision.
It's going to be tough.
Ten's normally pretty good when it comes to bowl season. You know this.
I know.
All right, well, next game up here, we'll stick in Big Ten country. We'll see if you pick them. This time, the Wisconsin Badgers and the Arizona State Sun Devils in the Las Vegas Bowl. I don't really know how to think about this game because both teams are 8-4. Wisconsin really hasn't been special this season. They haven't really shown you much throughout the year. Graham Mertz was getting better. This team revolves around Braylon Allen. They figured out that they could win if they run the football. And if they stop running the football like they did against Minnesota, in which they only had 17 carries for Braylon Allen, they lose football games. So if Arizona State has the rush defense, this should be a good game. I just don't know if they have that because – their last game you saw against the Arizona Wildcats, a really bad football team. There was only 50 rushing yards allowed. But, throughout this season, you've seen the same inconsistencies that you have all season long. They allowed 237 rushing yards to Oregon State. So this team has been a roller coaster of emotions down the final stretch of the season. And they were playing in the Pac-12 in what, in my opinion, is probably the weakest of all of our Power 5 conferences this season. They were outside of – the top standings of Oregon and Utah. maybe UCLA. This Arizona State team's right up there with them, but I just don't think the top was even very strong because you saw how weak the bottom was, and you saw a lot of bottom feeding throughout the season out of the Pac-12. So I think that 8-4 looks a little phony going into this game. You know, these teams are both on the edge of a potential cancellation for this game anyways, but I like Wisconsin to take this game. Braylon Allen is a very talented running back. He's really put the team on his shoulders in the late stages of the season. They've been in some absolute dogfights, and they've come out on top. I'm looking for them to do it again. I think Wisconsin will take this game. I think their entire season is different. If week 1 they beat Penn State, I think this team probably had a chance to finish with 10, 11 wins on the season, but that Penn State loss to open things out, it killed the momentum, and they started out against Notre Dame in Michigan. So definitely not the 1-2 punch you wanted on the season. And after those 3 losses to open up the year, they lost just one more time, and it came all the way down to the final week. So this Wisconsin team has found a way to win football games. I like Wisconsin to take it.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Big Ten here. I'm going to go back to what I said about Purdue. They're strong. They have played teams. I know I didn't pick them. I know I didn't pick, Michigan State over Pitt, but Wisconsin tough. They have tough schedule. Arizona State is flashy, but really 50 yards rushing, like you said. Wisconsin can run the ball, and I don't think this Arizona State defense will be able to stop the run. So I'm going to go Wisconsin here as well.
All right. Well, once again, we're keeping in the Big Ten. It was an unpredictable game that we'd be talking about, Big Ten. The Gator Bowl, Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons, and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. This is just one of those games you're like, oh, man, you really had to put Rutgers in there? Like,
no, I
we don't like
it.
Greg Schiano as much as the next guy here, but Rutgers? I mean, if you were going to pick, who's the worst Big Ten team that I can put in there? Rutgers is like number 2 or number 3 right now. I wouldn't want to see Indiana by any stretch of the imagination, and Nebraska and Northwestern were terrible this year. Rutgers has that. They were better than 3 teams in the Big Ten this season. But still, if you told me who's the last team from the Big Ten you probably wanted to see, Rutgers is probably number 1. I do not have faith that the Scarlet Knights can win a football game. I mean, can you even ask somebody to go, I want you to pick Rutgers over Wake Forest? I can't see that ever being the case. I mean, you saw Wake Forest all season long play great football. I mean, you saw them in an ACC championship game, and they couldn't find a better replacement than Rutgers to do this one against. I mean, you're asking for a total beatdown right now of the Scarlet Knights. This isn't a bowl game. This won't even be a game. This is a coronation ceremony for Wake Forest's season. This is going to be lethal.
Yeah, as much as I want to go with Rutgers, I can't.
Right. You just can't realistically say, you know what? I think Rutgers can beat Wake Forest. Are you kidding me?
They have Sam Hartman. I know they don't have much of a defense, but it's Rutgers.
And it's still Sam Hartman. This guy was
Sam Hartman will go off.
He had a rough stretch to finish things out. But, I mean, this offense relies around Sam Hartman, and he can go off. I mean, you look at a team like Duke, who I would maybe say was on a similar level to Rutgers this season. You saw Sam Hartman put up 402 yards and 3 touchdowns, and they hardly had to do anything else. They won 45-7. You saw Sam Hartman against a pretty good Army team put up 5 touchdowns and 458 yards on nearly perfect completions. I mean, this guy, unless he's going up against a super top defense, he's balling out. I mean, the only teams he struggled against were Clemson, Pitt. I mean, there weren't many other situations he struggled along the season. Yeah, he had a pretty easy, ride throughout most of it. But, I mean, this guy can go off for 3-4 touchdowns and 300, 400 yards on any given day. And I just don't think Rutgers has that kind of talent on their roster to be able to match that. I mean, what are we going to count on Evan Simon and Noah Vedral to be the guy? You saw those guys that come in against Ohio State when they were pretty much in desperation mode. And the completion percentages were great, but they couldn't really win a football game. They couldn't score. You saw that all season. Rutgers' biggest problem was their offense. They figured it out a few times, but majority of this season, this team was playing like crap. They had a few games where they went, ooh, we're going to shine that turd up, but this one's going to be a crap fest in this bowl game. It's going to be Wake Forest, probably by about 50.
Yeah. Kind of good. Yeah.
Well, next game up here, we got the Sun Bowl. This one, a little bit of a change up on who was going to be in it. Miami had to withdraw because of their COVID situation. Boise State had to drop out of their bowl game in the Arizona Bowl. They were set to face Central Michigan, but Central Michigan got moved here to Washington State due to Boise's dropout and Miami's dropout. So now the Sun Bowl is the Washington State Cougars at 7-5 versus the 8-4 Central Michigan Chippewas. I like Central Michigan in this matchup.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, I mean, I also really like what the MAC has done this season. This was one of the best teams in the MAC West. They were basically a half game behind Northern Illinois, who won the MAC championship. So Central was right in a situation to have been right there next to next to Northern Illinois and potentially take that spot away in the MAC West for the championship. But it just didn't come to be. But this Central Michigan team, they've been pretty good all season. No, they don't necessarily have that win that you can plant the flag down, and they're only out of conference games were Missouri and LSU in the Power 5, and they lost both of those, and now they're here again taking on another Power 5 team. But I don't think Washington State is that great of a Power 5 football team. Sure, they finished second in the Pac-12 North. Give them that kind of credit, and the losses already on Central Michigan seasons were LSU and Missouri, so obviously not two great teams there. But you also never really saw this Washington State play phenomenal in a game this season when they really needed to. I mean, their top 25 games, they lost. One by 2 points to BYU, another one 9 points to Utah, and 14 points to Oregon. So they weren't blowouts by any stretch of the imagination, but you never saw them actually be able to close out of these games. I'm a little bit worried that you're just going to see this team fall flat once again.
Yeah, Central Michigan, good MAC team. Washington State, honestly, I think they've fallen. They haven't been the same team since Leach has left. Since Leach has left the program, I don't think they had that same fire. Like, you don't see players like Minshew, like what Minshew was there. That was sweet with Minshew and Leach there. It's that chemistry, that fire they had, it's gone. It's not there anymore. The only thing they got going for them is that they got the flag up every game day. That's the only reason why people know Washington State, honestly, besides the people that live there. So, I gotta go Central Michigan. I think, like you said, tough MAC division. They were one of the best teams in the MAC, and never, ever take the MAC too lightly. The MAC will come and, bite you. And,
you've already seen it. Right now, the Group of 5 is 5-0 against our Power 5 team. So, to me, there's no guarantee just because the one team is finished second in their division of the Pac-12 means that they can beat someone else that finished in second place of their division in the MAC. I don't see there being that much of a separation between the middle grounds of these two conferences. I don't think the Pac-12 was very great, and I thought the MAC had a good season, and I hope they can finish it out with this win. Matt, I think I'm right there along with you in this. Central Michigan is going to win this. The Chippewas are great, and the Cougars, they're okay. They like to throw the football a lot. Both these teams are probably going to put up an explosive performance. The Chippewas are big play offense. They were the second best passing offense in the MAC this season. Their defense had the most sacks and plays in the backfield by anybody in the MAC conference this year. They had the nation's best punt return game. I think the Chippewas are in for a big showing here in this bowl game. I got Central Michigan as well, and that's that.
Yep. That's
moving along here. Arizona Bowl canceled. This one, the Verbo Citrus Bowl. Top 25 matchup here in bowl weekend. This one, the Iowa Hawkeyes versus the Kentucky Wildcats. Iowa 10-3, Kentucky 9-3. I don't know how to feel about this game because Iowa feels like a roller coaster. You never know what you're getting out of them because every game is so tight. They constantly play down to the level of their opponent. They play just like the jerseys they're dressed in, like the Steelers. we always talk Steelers always play down. Iowa is always playing down because they have so much talent that you just see them fall apart sometimes. And you saw them completely fall apart against Michigan, and you were pretty much baffled on the absolute dismantleization of the Hawkeyes against the Wolverines there. And you saw that two more times along the season against Purdue and against Wisconsin in back-to-back weeks. The rest of the season looked pretty darn good for Iowa. I mean, they had some close games all throughout, but that's always Iowa football. I just don't know now if they have the pieces and with Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla to win a football game here on a big stage against a top 25 team. Obviously, I think Kentucky is a bit of a fluff team. They don't really have any good wins on the season. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. I can't say what their best win is because I don't think they have a best win. Maybe LSU early on in the season. I got nothing for Kentucky. This is a flop football team. They shouldn't have been ranked at all. Yeah, they were 9-3, led by Will Levis, who obviously has some experience against Iowa football in the past.
Yeah.
I just
not that much though.
Will Levis wasn't really that great. He had some good performances against New Mexico State where he put up 419 yards and 4 touchdowns. But he still threw an interception in that game. And when the Cards were down and this team needed to play against good teams, they couldn't win. And that's the biggest problem that I'm looking at here is, what are you really trying to compare LA Monroe to Iowa or Chattanooga? I mean, Chattanooga nearly upset Kentucky, and the Chattanooga Mocs were 1-2 at the time. And they finished out the season 6-5 in the FCS against teams like Mercer and Wofford and Samford. You know, all the teams that the SEC goes in and absolutely slaughters, you know, like the Thanksgiving turkey.
Everybody.
Kentucky. This is not a good team. This was a fluff opponent. If anything, I think Iowa is going to win this football game based on the fact that I don't think Kentucky is very good at what they do.
No, me either. And I was hyped
because they had a really pretty easy schedule.
Yeah, I was hyped up on this Kentucky team. I was when they beat a top 10 Florida team. I was like, all right, sweet. But Florida was falling. That was Florida's fault. And then they beat LSU, but LSU was up and down this season. Then when the real games came, they got killed. They got killed by Georgia. Mississippi State beat them, and they didn't even beat Tennessee. You beat Vanderbilt. You beat in the Vanderbilt game where 34-17. Like that's okay. They beat them, but like
that was Vanderbilt.
New Mexico State. They beat Louisville. They beat bad teams. Okay, you mentioned it. The best game look at this game. They only beat Chattanooga 28-23.
That's what I was saying, man.
So yeah, Iowa is way better. Defense. The defense will tear them up. Period.
Yeah, and it really is based on that defense for Iowa. That's how they won games all season. It wasn't, the arm of Spencer Petras or bringing in Padilla to win football games. It's the strength of Iowa's defense. And with the turnover proneness of Will Levis, you saw it at Penn State. He throws interceptions. It's just part of his game, which is why he'll never be an NFL caliber quarterback. But he throws interceptions, and you can't do that against the Hawkeyes defense. And that's really going to be the turning point of this game is Iowa has a phenomenal defense that you just never saw from Kentucky.
Yeah,
they had a powerful offense, I'll give you that, but their defense couldn't keep them, out of trouble most of the time. So, after those interceptions, this team pretty much dies out, and I got a feeling we're going to see that again. But let's continue to move on. This one, the Fiesta Bowl, one of our favorite matchups of the season, Oklahoma State and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I love this matchup for this Saturday at 1 p.m. I think this is probably one of, if not the best matchups we're going to see. This one really could have been a playoff game as well. If you saw Oklahoma State beat Baylor in that final week, Oklahoma State could very easily be at least talked about for the college football playoff. You saw Notre Dame right on the outside looking into the playoffs, obviously. So I think you just have to look at this game, and this is when you take a step back and you go, I'm ordering pizza, I'm getting popcorn, I am sitting down, and I ain't moving because this is going to be a fantastic game. You saw Oklahoma State all season long led by their defense, and they have an offense that can produce right along with them, and that's one of the biggest things that you could ask for is Spencer Sanders, dual threat quarterback, and he's so up and down, and he throws a lot of interceptions, and it really hurts this team's momentum. They would have beat Baylor if he hadn't had 4 interceptions in that football game because Baylor couldn't score the football, but neither could Oklahoma State. So they're going to have to change some things up, find a way to get him more comfortable, because there were times this season he looked phenomenal. There was other times this season he looked like Nathan Peterman, and he was pretty bad. So they're going to have to find ways just to allow him just to sit there and do his game while the running game takes over. They have to get the ground game going. And on the other side for Notre Dame, they really just have to keep doing what they do. I mean, Jack Cohn obviously showed out at the end of the season, and obviously this team was doing pretty well down the stretch. They only had 1 loss on the year. The beginning of the season was rough for them, but they picked it up, and their only loss is Cincinnati. They have wins over Purdue and Wisconsin and UNC. You know, they don't have a fantastic strength of schedule, and that's why they obviously weren't in the college football playoff, because they really didn't have anybody outside of that Cincinnati game when they lost. But I still think you saw this team in the final 4 weeks trying to make statement after statement. I mean, through 3 of their final 4 games, they allowed just 9 points. In that 4th one, they allowed just 14 points to Stanford. So 23 points through 4 games. That's a pretty good stat line for this defense. They really picked it up in the final half of this season. To me, Notre Dame is probably the favorite to go in here against Oklahoma State and win it, because I think they're a more complete team. And obviously, I think you really just have to look no farther in that 55-0 game against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. This team figured something out. They picked apart Georgia Tech, and then they pretty much did the same thing against against Stanford the next week. Stanford couldn't really do much in there, and Notre Dame just ran their offense with Tyler Buckner and Kyron Williams, Chris Tyree. They run the football well.
Kyron Williams
up the slack. Jack Cohn is used to working with high-caliber running backs. He was with Jonathan Taylor in Wisconsin. He knows what it's like to just be the quarterback that can, sit back, let the ground game do its job, and then when you need me, I'm here to pick up the slack and finish this thing out. And that's what they did at the end half of the season. They took the ball out of Jack Cohn's hand and went, we're running the football, be ready. And he was, and he played that role great. And I think you're going to see the same thing here of taking the ball out of his hands. And I think Notre Dame is probably the favorite to win this. I'm actually going to pick Notre Dame. I initially had Oklahoma State down, but I don't have confidence Spencer Sanders can keep this team in the game for 4 quarters. And when you talk about bowl games, quarterback play is pretty huge. And we already talked about that with Pitt. And probably the reason they're going to lose to Michigan State is they don't have Kenny Pickett anymore. Both these teams still have their starting quarterbacks, but Spencer Sanders isn't much better than a backup quarterback. And I don't think they have the offense to compete against Notre Dame's defense.
No, I don't either. Just the defense DJ Brown can pick off the ball, 3 interceptions. I like their defense. And Kyron Williams really just bursted onto the scene. Where did this guy come from? Yeah, over 1,000 yard rushing on the season. And I like the backup running backs too. I like what Chris Tyree can bring, even though he hasn't had a lot of rushing yards. He can come in under 3rd downs and get you some good 3rd down conversions. But Jack Cohn has been great. We saw him up and down a little bit. After that Cincinnati game and a little bit after that, we saw him lock in. And I bet you if they replay that Cincinnati game, it would be a lot closer. That'd be an interesting game to see. But of course, we'll probably not see it until maybe next year. You never know. But Kyron Williams, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be based off the run. And, he's been unstoppable already. And, I'm going to go with Notre Dame, too. I've been rolling with them this whole year. So, I got to stick with Notre Dame. Even though I like Oklahoma State, but like you said, Sanders, just inconsistent. He's kind of similar to, what Bo Nix is a little bit. So, if you wouldn't have thrown the interceptions, they probably would have won that Oklahoma game, and they probably would have been in the playoff. So I got to go with Notre Dame here. They're looking for – they're mad that they didn't get put in the playoff.
This becomes a statement game, and you see in the Fiesta Bowl, in the Rose Bowl, when one team is trying to make a statement, they make it pretty big, and I got a feeling Notre Dame is going to be the one making
and they're mad that they didn't get in the playoff either.
Right.
So –
well – next game up for us, we'll talk Sugar Bowl, baby. The Baylor Bears and the Ole Miss Rebels, 6 versus 8. This is another really good matchup. 2 strong defenses. Baylor, their offense concerns me in this one because we know they really weren't that great. I mean, Blake Shapen has been stepping up in the later stages of this season, but I just don't know if this offense really has what it takes to do it. I mean, you saw this offense all season long never really play big at any one point in order to win football games. And Ole Miss, all they did was play big. I'm more concerned about their defense in this football game than the offense because Matt Corral's obviously a special quarterback, but
yeah,
we'll see if he's sitting out for this one.
I hope not.
I don't know. It looks like he's still playing. So looks like we're going to get Matt Corral in another pretty good game. And I'm very excited to see how he handles Baylor's defense because they have been probably one of the strongest defenses in the Big 12 all season long, if not the strongest. And I fully expect that defense to show up, cause some chaos for Matt Corral, and potentially wreak havoc to the end of their season. You already saw him struggle in their final game against Mississippi State, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He couldn't really ever pull away from Vanderbilt. He's throwing about 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and I just don't feel like he's got it all together right now. But on the other hand, I don't think Baylor has much of an offense, and I think that's where Ole Miss capitalizes. It's just their defense gets them in the right spots to win football games. And when you talk Baylor football, their defense does the same. I just don't think their offense has what it takes to keep up with a guy like Matt Corral.
Yeah. Me either. Matt Corral has been the huge story for this Ole Miss team. Kind of like how Pickett was with Pitt. If Ole Miss didn't have Matt Corral, probably wouldn't be in this bowl game right now. Probably wouldn't be 10-2 with an 8 ranking. Probably wouldn't be. But Matt Corral he's got the offense. I don't really like this offense of, man, who they playing? I don't really like this offense of, Baylor too much. You talked about it. I like what Corral has done. I'm gonna stick with the Ole Miss Rebels and that baby blue color.
All right. Well, it's been hard to pick against Ole Miss all season. We pretty much had them on every week. You saw them in top 25 matchups. It was, hey, I'm taking Ole Miss. If they lose, they lose, but I don't think they're going to lose too often, and that's pretty much what we saw. And so we settled down to one final bowl game here before college football playoffs talk tomorrow. This one, the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, Ohio State and Utah, and what might be the most terrifying matchup of the Ohio State season because Utah picked apart and decimated the team that came into the Horseshoe and beat Ohio State and Oregon. They allowed 17 points to Oregon through 2 games, while on the other side scoring 76 of their own in a dominating physical matchup in 2 out of 3 weeks. This Utah team is amazing. Yes, they have phenomenal line play. And where that hurts the most right now is Ohio State is going to be without one of our offensive linemen and Nicholas Petit-Frere and our best defensive tackle in Haskell Garrett. Haskell the Rascal is sitting out of this game. Ohio State also without 2 of our top 3 receivers. There's no earth, there's no wind, there's just fire. So it's going to be up to Jackson Smith and the Jigba and the reinforcements to come in here and win the game. If anybody has the talent at the wide receiver position to replace guys like Olave and Wilson, it is Ohio State. I mean, it is the most lethal wide receiving core in the nation, and they are full of top 5 guys. I mean, every single class, it seems, they have the number 1 wide receiver. So if they can't put things together in this game with the wide receiving core they have, that's really a shame of the coaching because they really do have everything it takes to be able to win a game like this. And C.J. Stroud is an incredible quarterback. You look no further than what he did against Michigan State. The Michigan game too. You know what? I'll pull up the Michigan game. Maybe his worst game. He was still 34 for 49, 394 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was everybody else around him that seemed to struggle in that game besides the wide receiver core. The defense sucked. The offense in the running game really had nothing going at any point in there, and C.J. Stroud got sacked way too many times in that Michigan game. We've talked about it. I won't go back into it. But C.J. Stroud, before that in Michigan State, 32 of 35, 432 yards and 6 touchdowns in that decimation of the Spartans. And now you're seeing the Spartans in another, New Year's Six Bowl after Ohio State decimated them and made them look silly and made Peyton Thorne look like Nathan Peterman. This Buckeye team has everything it takes. The biggest question to me, can they run the football? Because you've seen multiple times when Ohio State hasn't been able to run the football, they have struggled to win games. And on the other side of that, when they have struggled to stop the run game, they have lost big games. And that's the Michigan one. That's the Oregon game. That was the Minnesota game early in the season that everyone wants to forget about. That Minnesota team is pretty darn good, and they came down to the wire against Ohio State. And everyone criticized the Buckeyes for that win, but that was an early game for a true freshman or a redshirt freshman quarterback that had never thrown a pass in the Big Ten. So
Yeah.
To me, this solely relies on stopping Utah's run game because Utah, even in those games against Oregon, they didn't throw the ball great. Cameron Rising is not a spectacular Heisman level quarterback. He was 15 of 24, 170 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Even against Colorado, he wasn't going absolutely amazing. He had 3 touchdowns and an interception. This team wins running the football. Tavion Thomas and TJ Pledger, they're both guys that can go off for 100 yards in a game. And those are the kind of guys you have to look out for in this matchup because Cameron Rising is not going to be the guy that beats you. He is just like Jack Cohen. I'm sitting there. I'm letting the ground game do it. If you need me, I'm here. I'm ready. That is his style of play. And that is what Utah has done to success all this season. But they can lose, and we saw that multiple times, that this is not an unbeatable team. They lost to San Diego State. They lost to BYU. And Oregon State. This team can be beat. It takes a lot to do it because as much as we talk about Ohio State having the most lethal offense in the country, Utah's right behind them. They're not too far off. They can put up a lot of points. They're just not as flashy as the Buckeyes. And when you talk about this game, I think that concerns me a little bit because Utah plays very similar to Michigan in terms of their offensive and defensive attacks. Their defense is going to crowd the line. They're going to make rushing lanes very hard, and you saw that against Oregon. Oregon could not move the football, and C.J. Stroud, he's going to be under pressure, and we saw against Michigan. When under pressure, he couldn't get the ball off in time because Ohio State doesn't necessarily have the best passing offensive line. Their rushing offensive line is pretty good, and they can open up a lot of holes, but you didn't see that against Michigan. And with the way that Utah plays very similar in style to Michigan, that worries me because I think you see a lot of similarities between those two teams. I think Michigan does it better, and that's why they're obviously in the college football playoff, and Utah isn't because Utah lost 3 times along the season, and Michigan only lost once. But I think Utah is the scariest opponent we've seen all season at Ohio State because they're so similar to Michigan, and I don't think we thought Michigan was going to be scary because we obviously have dominated them over the last decade. They got taken for granted, and Ohio State paid the price because of that. I think they're ready for Utah, but I still think they know Utah is very similar to that team that just destroyed us, dismantled us, embarrassed us on the national stage. People are still making fun of Ohio State because of that loss, that team up north. Even if Michigan goes on to win the college football playoff, everyone is still going to make fun of Ohio State for that performance, despite the fact it wasn't a terrible performance offensively. It was just the defense that allowed 40-plus points to Michigan. So I think this game is very similar to what you saw last time you saw the Buckeyes take the field, and that does scare me a little bit because without Garrett Wilson and without Olave, defense for Utah is going to be able to lock it down on Jackson Smith-Njigba, and it's going to be up to other guys on this offense to help him out because it's not going to be a solo show anymore where it's just Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, and Olave. They need to get Jeremy Ruckert involved. They have to find other guys out there in Julian Fleming, G. Scott Jr. I mean, they have 1,000 guys you can go to. They just have to find them here.
Yes, that they do. I want to talk about a little bit about Utah here. In the games that they have lost, that first game that they lost, Cameron Rising threw an interception. The run game went off. Bernard, went off running. But that was BYU. BYU, they picked them off. They ended up winning the game. The next game, Rising was fine. 3 rushing touchdowns, or 3 throwing touchdowns, and even Charlie Brewer came in. You remember Charlie Brewer, the old Baylor quarterback? He came in and played. But he played great. The passing game was great, but then the rushing was horrible. 47 yards rushing for Bernard, and Cameron Rising had 5 carries for 46 yards. What happened to the big rushing game from the BYU game that it dissipated here? I don't understand that at all. If you can stop the run, basically, you can pretty much stop this Utah team. And plus Cameron Rising, too. If you get under Cameron Rising's skin, he's going to falter. That's what
forced
BYU
turnovers
did.
are going to be huge in this game, and Ohio State's going to have to do that without some of their best guys defensively. But we haven't really seen their defense take over. I think Denzel Burke needs to really show out in this game. I mean, the entire defense has to. It's got to be Hickman, obviously Burke. We're going to need someone to step up on the defensive line. You've seen Eichenberg from the linebacker spot really start showing up big in these last few games for Ohio State. Obviously, Steel Chambers is going to have to play big. He's been a great transition over to the linebacker this season, and we're going to need guys like that to solidify a pretty question mark of a defensive line. That's something we didn't see against Michigan, was the linebackers able to come in for help. One of the biggest change-ups I want to see from Ryan Day in this game is blitz. I felt so many times in that Michigan game, Ohio State played so passively and just went, we're just going to sit back in our zone and let them run at us, and we're going to make our tackles. Then they missed the tackles. And then you see Hassan Haskins running down the field, making the Buckeyes look silly, spinning in circles. And one of those biggest things now, I want to see Ohio State play aggressive. I feel like it's been so long since you saw this defense attack. They're always being attacked. They're always on their heels. You never see this defense show up and go, this is going to be my house. I am going to make this team on the other side, my BITCH. This defense just plays so weak at times.
Yeah.
I want to see them attack, blitz Utah, get Rising under pressure, stop the run, stuff rushing lanes, set the edge.
That's how they'll win.
Special teams. This was one of the biggest things that annoyed me against Michigan a few weeks ago. Special teams. Why is no one ever rushing the punter? This is one of the things that Urban Meyer did so great when he was at Ohio State. We always had a phenomenal special teams unit. They were never afraid to come after the punter. Now it seems Ohio State, they're putting 4 defensive linemen up there, and they're sitting back in a zone like they're getting ready for a pass play. There were times that Michigan game that Michigan was backed up on their own 2-3 yard line, and Ohio State wasn't bringing anybody to try and block the punt. They need to change that up. It's time to be more aggressive because, Ohio State shouldn't be losing the Rose Bowl. We have we've appeared there in pretty much 16 times. This is number 17, where we have an 8-7 record, or pardon me, this is number 16. We have an 8-7 overall record. I don't want to see this continue to go 500 back and forth. Ohio State needs to win the Rose Bowl. They need to make a statement after that Michigan loss. To me, it would kill me to see Ohio State finish the season with 2 straight losses, and I don't even know the last time that happened. It may have been back in Luke Fickell's 1 year where he went 6-6. That may be the last time this team finished with 2 straight losses to finish out the year. That's unheard of in Buckeye territory, and that will be a huge stain on Ryan Day's career early on if he loses back-to-back, including one in the Rose Bowl. I mean, you see the Rose Bowl be, in Ohio State history, where our greatest coaches have found success. Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer finished off his career in the Rose Bowl at Ohio State. To me, Ryan Day needs this one to put him back in the good hearts of the Buckeye fans, because I think a lot of people are in doubt mode right now because we haven't seen Michigan do that to us in the last 20 years with guys like Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer at the helm. And now you saw Ryan Day already losing to that team up north. I think Ryan Day needs this to solidify his legacy once again. Obviously, he's a great coach, and I'm not saying throw him out by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously, I'm picking my Buckeyes to win this. I have faith that they can do it. But they have to play like they want this. And that's what I don't know if they have. I don't know if they want this game anymore because it's not the playoffs. This team, you kind of feel it in the fan base right now. It's not the playoffs. It doesn't matter. To me, this matters. They need this. I want this. I want to see the team want it too.
In Ohio State, the Rose Bowl has been their game. Last time they were there was 2019. I think they played Washington. Yeah. They won that game. I remember the big Oregon game, 2011. They won that game. They're 8-7 overall in the Rose Bowl. But, the most recently they have dominated this Rose Bowl game. Doesn't matter that they're going from Ohio to Pasadena, and everybody say no, Utah's closer.
It's a second home.
Huh?
Rose Bowl has become a second home for Ohio State, but we do have to make our pick.
Absolutely. Oh, you know who
Gotta
I'm
make our picks
going
here.
with.
I got the Buckeyes, obviously. Matt, I imagine you're rolling along with me, or you flipping to the
I'm
Utes?
going with the Buckeyes too. It doesn't matter that they don't have Earth and Win. They still have Nick Jigba. They still have fire. And look at the guys that
They still
they're
have the
gonna
number
bring
one
up.
wide receiver in the country.
Exactly. They still have the top recruits. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
All right, Matt. Moving on here now. NBA really quickly. Cleveland Cavaliers and the Washington Wizards. Everyone knows who we're taking in this one. It's more of just a point. We want to wish Ricky Rubio the best of luck in his recovery here on the show. And, I mean, it's pretty obvious we're all Cavs fans are obviously we're all taking the Cavs in this game. But I definitely feel like Cavs need some help, and I'm interested to see who they bring in. Matt, are you taking the Cavs as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? But the Cavs, we need help. We need help. And the only year the finally the year we're coming out and becoming a great team, we got two of our main guards out, and everybody's riddled with COVID and stuff like that, and it just sucks. Okay, it stinks. I don't like it. I mean, we win by 45 points against the Raptors, and then we blow a 26-point lead the next game. I mean, we got to figure something out. We need help.
All right, Matt. Well, moving on here a little bit more. We got to speed through NHL really quickly. Lightning versus the Panthers. Lightning in first place of the Atlantic Division. Panthers in third place of said division. These two teams feel pretty neck and neck. I mean, you've seen the Panthers kind of slip up in their last 10. They're 5-4-1. Matt, you got a pick for me on this one? Lightning versus Panthers?
Yeah, Panthers have been slipping up, and the Lightning have been staying on track. It's going to be a good battle, but I think in the end, Tampa Bay is going to pull it out. 1-goal game, I think.
Yeah, I think this will be a 1-goal game as well. The scoring differential pretty much even, so I'm going to go with the hot hand as well. I got Tampa Bay to win this puck game, and I don't have confidence with the Panthers right now with the way that they've been playing. I think if this game was happening a few weeks ago, I think it would go the other way. But with the way they've been falling apart recently, I don't think they have it right now. So, I mean, what are you going to do about it? That's it. That's the show here today. Come on back tomorrow for the New Year's Eve games and, of course, highlights of the week and our favorite Meathead of the Week award. I've been Alek Koberna. That's Matt Morrison.